Today's presentation focuses on switching stances in MMA. This is something I'm interested in as an MMA fan. I was interested in seeing if fighters who switch tend to win more fights or have an advantage over fighters who remain in a fixed stance, such as orthodox or southpaw. The data for this presentation came from Kaggle, and I will include a link to the dataset in the video description. This presentation was last updated on the 3rd of July 2024. So here's our overview of today's presentation. First, we'll quickly look at our objective for today's presentation. Then we'll get into more detail examining the data. And finally, we'll end with a couple of conclusions or takeaways from today. So first, let's look at our objective. Today, we're trying to identify how switching stances affects MMA fighters' offense and defense, as well as overall win percentage. Let's take a look at what we found out. Offense, the first thing we'll look at is the number of strikes landed per minute. In this bar chart, you can see that we have divided the fighters into three groups. We've got orthodox on the left, southpaw in the middle, and fighters who switch on the right-hand side. Now, what does this tell us? Well, firstly, it tells us that fighters in orthodox and southpaw stances tend to land a very similar number of strikes. In contrast to this, fighters who switch land significantly more, 3.48 as opposed to 2.77. The difference between these was statistically significant. Next, let's look at striking accuracy. Again, we've divided the fighters into the same three groups. The numbers on the side this time indicate the percentage of striking accuracy. This one shows us that fighters who switched tended to have higher striking accuracy than those who didn't. In terms of statistical significance, there was a statistically significant difference between orthodox and switch fighters. However, the difference between southpaw and switch was not statistically significant. Next, let's take a look at defense. First, the number of strikes absorbed per minute. As you can see on the chart, fighters who switch did tend to absorb more strikes per minute on average than fighters in fixed stances. The difference here was statistically significant. If we compare between orthodox and southpaw, this difference was not statistically significant. In terms of striking defense as a percentage, orthodox and southpaw fighters defended a similar percentage of strikes, and fighters who switched defended a much lower percentage. This difference was statistically significant. So next, we'll look at the important one, which is win percentage. As you can see here, fighters who switch stances did tend to win a larger percentage of their fights than fighters who remained in one stance. The difference here was statistically significant. So what does this all mean? Let's take a look at a couple of our conclusions, things we can take away from today. First, we'll look at the pros. What are the advantages of switching stances in MMA? There were three that we picked up. Mainly the higher win percentage, very important. But you're also talking about things like higher striking accuracy and being able to land more strikes per minute. On the other side, there are some cons. For example, absorbing more strikes per minute and also defending a lower percentage of strikes overall. So overall, what can we conclude from this? Um, we could say that switching stance positively affects offensive capabilities, but negatively affects defense. It's kind of a high risk, high reward strategy. And that was our main takeaway from this data set. Thank you very much for watching today's presentation. And next, if this was a real presentation, we would open up for Q&A. If anyone does have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comments of the video. It's my first time doing this, and I'm trying to get better. I'm doing this as part of a portfolio project. So any feedback you have would be greatly appreciated. Cool. Thank you very much.